snap. There's the kick. It's gone! Oh my gosh! The kick is gone!
Boston Sports Nerds present Joe's Fantasy Field Goal.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of Joe's Fantasy Field Goal, where I'm going to be giving you 3 points to help you win your fantasy football league. Today we have my wide receiver rankings, we have a player to avoid the hype on, and we have a tidbit on, I guess, another rant for point 1. So we'll get right into it. Point 1 is another rant, like I said. It's to eliminate Week 17 out of your playoff format. I don't know who's still playing that way, but it's dumb. The Week 17 format where, you get down to your final 6 teams or 4 teams or whatever, and then Week 15 counts for the first round, Week 16 for the second round, and then my leagues end on Week 16. Week 17 doesn't count. But some leagues have it so that Week 17 is either a 2-week total, Week 16 and 17, or they just use Week 17 as their championship game. I know the actual NFL season ends Week 17, but your fantasy season should end Week 16. Because in Week 17, you have teams that are no longer in the running, or they've clinched. So they play backups. And then guys like Ezekiel Elliott, who carried your team to the championship, don't even play in the championship game. And it's kind of a bummer, because you built this team, and the team you built played great, and now you have to win a championship with a completely different team. So I'm down. I'm down on Week 17 playoffs. They should be eliminated. I don't even think it should be an option anymore. The more competitive leagues end in Week 16. I'll leave it at that. Point number 2 is avoid the hype. And my player to avoid... I guess this would be like a bust, I guess. Someone who's not going to perform up to their draft position. And my avoid the hype, which pains me, as a Patriots fan, a guy that we spent a first-round pick on this year, traded away, because my avoid the hype is Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is a great receiver. Robert Kraft thinks he's going to be the next Randy Moss in New England's offense. I'm not as high on him. I think you guys have heard me and argue, if you're fans of the actual show, which I'd imagine you are because you're getting this off of our show's stream, or off of our show's feed. If you listen to the show, you know me and Dave have a little thing about who's going to perform better, Julian Edelman or Brandon Cooks. I think Julian Edelman has a better season this year just because of the rapport he has with Tom Brady. And I think Brandon Cooks right now is being drafted at the 212. He's getting drafted pretty much at the end of the second round, along with guys like T.Y. Hilton in the middle of the second round. Des Bryant is towards the end of the second round. Amari Cooper is towards the end of the second round. He's going 4 rounds ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. 4 rounds ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. Who do you think has a better season at the end of the year? I know, the hype. What about the hype? Brandon Cooks is going to be playing with an all-pro, Hall of Fame quarterback in an offense that puts up crazy points. And he came from a team that had a Hall of Fame quarterback and put up crazy points. At the most, it's a lateral move, and the Patriots have the most weapons they've had in years. You have Edelman, you have Gronk back healthy, you picked up Dwayne Allen, You picked up Brandon Cooks. You still have Amendola. You still have Malcolm Mitchell. James White out of the backfield. Deion Lewis out of the backfield. For now. Rex Burkhead. So, I mean, that's a lot of mouths to feed. Yes, 90-yard touchdowns are exciting. I know. But I like Brandon Cooks, but not for the end of the second round. Not when I could get a Dez Bryant or a Michael Thomas or a T.Y. Hilton or an Amari Cooper. Not when I could get a player like that. Pump the brakes a little on Brandon Cooks. If he falls to you later, 4th round, I would take him in the 4th, maybe 5th round, but not number 2. Not in the 2nd round. Oh, it's 2 quick points, I guess. Jeez. So we'll have a nice, the wide receiver rankings will take time, but we'll have a quicker episode this week, I guess. Point number 3 is my wide receiver rankings. Last week we did running back. Now we're going to do wide receiver. So my number 1 wide receiver is Antonio Brown. I mean, it's really kind of self-explanatory, right? Antonio Brown's the best receiver in football. He doesn't have a lot of injury issues. He's been pretty consistent in his playing time, not getting injured, stuff like that. He's a PPR monster. He's a standard monster. He performs even when Big Ben is hurt. Even when Big Ben has bad games, he's game script proof. Antonio Brown is a beast. He's my number 1. Probably the only reason he's number 1 is really because my number 2 guy, Julio Jones, is hurt. Often. Not as often as the narrative is. I think he's played at least 14 games in like 4 out of 6 seasons or something like that. He's hurt enough where I'm going to put him behind Julio Jones. Behind Antonio Brown. He's still a monster. He's still in a great offense. He's a physical freak. The only thing that's separating him really is that he's a little bit more injury prone than Antonio Brown is. So you can't really go wrong with either guy. You can't really go wrong with either of these first 4 or 5 guys. You can go wrong with the 5th guy because he was very wrong one year. But anyway, we'll go to 3. 3 is OBJ, which by the time this comes out, the last podcast we did will be out, where you can hear Aaron completely disagree with the fact that OBJ is a top 3 wide receiver. Me and Dave were flabbergasted by this, because he is. He's a top 3 dude. He has been for the last 2 years. So OBJ is my number 3. I know Brandon Marshall's there now. I know Sterling Shepard is coming back, but I'm not worried about it. OBJ is going to get his targets. I'm not worried about the holdout. I'm not worried about anything. Expect OBJ, obviously barring injury, but he hasn't really had injury problems. He's just been a nutcase. But barring any kind of crazy mishap, OBJ is going to be a beast. He's definitely going to finish in the top 5. So you can't go wrong with OBJ. My number 4 is actually a guy you can kind of get on a steal, considering he's my number 4. So, just to put it in perspective, Antonio Brown's going at the 104. Julio Jones and OBJ are both averaging going at like the 106. Jordy Nelson, who's my number 4, is going at the 201. So if you're on the turn, you can get a guy like DeMarco Murray and a wide receiver like Jordy Nelson. That's a good turn right there. That's a stud running back, a stud wide receiver. You're in a good position there. Especially since you didn't get one of those first 6 guys. You know what I mean? You didn't get DJ, Zeke, or Lev Bell, and you didn't get Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, or OBJ, but instead you got a stud in DeMarco Murray. You got a stud in Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson, every time he's healthy with Aaron Rodgers, he produces. So, again, barring injury, he's going to produce. He's a touchdown machine, that guy. I know he's getting older, but you gotta go with Jordy. He's definitely going to be a good number 4. He's He's going to be a good wide receiver 1, but I have him as my number 4. My number 5 is Mike Evans, who is going ahead of Jordy Nelson. He's going at the 108. The only thing Mike Evans is on here for is a little bit of inconsistency. He had a down year, not last year, but the year before. Last year he was great. Amazing. Hopefully he'll do it again. They added some pieces in Tampa Bay. They got Deshaun Jackson. They got O.J. Howard. They still have Cameron Brate. They still have Adam Humphries. Who, don't sleep on Adam Humphries. Jameis is still a good quarterback. He's not great, but, he's good enough. He throws the ball. It's not Alex Smith out there. I'm expecting Mike Evans to still be good, especially with the attention that Deshaun Jackson and some of those other guys will pull away from him, letting Mike Evans be Mike Evans out there, catching jump balls and touchdowns. So hopefully he doesn't have another inconsistent year. He doesn't have a regression back to the year before. But I think he'll be good. My number 6 is A.J. Green. He's being drafted at the 110, so still ahead of Jordy Nelson. A.J. Green is good. I'm a little worried about the Bengals' offensive line and the time that Andy Dalton's going to have, because they lost some key components to that offensive line. And I think Andy Dalton's going to get smacked a lot this year. They got John Ross in the draft. They still have Tyler Eifert. But John Ross is going to take that wide receiver 2 role, I think. So it's going to be A.J. Green and Tyler Eifert. And I don't think John Ross is going to play into that very much. A.J. Green, when he was healthy, he's a little bit injury prone. But when he was healthy, he was a stud last year. I think he'll still be a stud. I'm not really worried about it. I am worried about that offensive line, so I guess I am kind of worried about it, just because I think Andy Dalton's going to get smacked a lot. But A.J. Green will still be good. He'll still be a top. He'll still be a wide receiver 1. My number 7 is T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton kind of had a fucking awesome year last year. Not even kind of. He just had a fucking awesome year last year. Especially with Dante Moncrief out, who I have a deep-rooted love for. I think he'll be even better with Dante Moncrief back and healthy next year, though. Take a little bit extra attention off of him, because outside of T.Y. Hilton, it's not like they're loaded with weapons. They also have an awful offensive line, but Andrew Luck is mobile, and T.Y. Hilton, and he loves T.Y. Hilton. So I think T.Y. Hilton repeats what he did last year, and you can get him in the 206. So it's another good wide receiver that you can pick up in the second round there to help out. Actually, everyone else pretty much that I'm about to name, you can get at least in the second round. After T.Y. Hilton is Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas could be even better than where I have him ranked right now, but he's coming off a rookie season that was amazing. Maybe there'll be a little sophomore slump, but I don't know. I could almost move him up. Michael Thomas, they lost Brandon Cooks in New Orleans, and so Michael Thomas is the guy there. I think that's going to affect Willie Snead a little bit more, which is why I have Michael Thomas where he is. And they brought in Adrian Peterson, so maybe they're gonna run a little bit more. Maybe that's the plan. But I still like Michael Thomas this year. The kid was a stud, and he's gonna have more opportunity. And like I said before, opportunity trumps talent sometimes, but he has both. So keep an eye on Michael Thomas. That's a good pickup in the second round, early second. My number 9 is Dez Bryant. Dez had a weird year last year. With Dak Prescott as the quarterback, he was a little down last year. Mainly because he was hurt, though. When he was there, he played good, especially later in the season once Dak really found his rhythm. I think he'll get off to a much better start this year than the early part of last year. Dez is safe. He's not... I mean, again, barring injury, which no one likes to predict, he'll be fine. behind that offensive line. The only thing that worries me about Dallas is they like to run the ball. So Dez is the best receiver on that team by far. And he will be the number one target for Dak Prescott. They just throw the ball a little less than other teams do. Not like the Chiefs or anything. My number 10 is Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin's sneaky, man. People always forget about him. He's going in the third. And he likes to get off to slow starts. But he's been a wide receiver 1 for like the past 3 years. And you can get him in the third. There's more people on this list. Well, I guess one more person on this list. My top 15 that's still going to go ahead of him. You can get Doug Baldwin a whole round after Michael Thomas. And I don't think the drop off is that significant between the two of them. If Doug Baldwin can have a full season like his second half of seasons, he'd be a top 5 wide receiver. Easy. And he had a slow start last year. Russell Wilson came out of the gates pretty banged up. He was all wrapped up, couldn't move around the pocket like he normally does. And as he got healthier through the season, Doug Baldwin got better. So a healthy Russell Westbrook, a healthy Russell Wilson, and a healthy Doug Baldwin is a dangerous mix. So I like Doug Baldwin, especially in the third round. That's a great value. My number 11 is the biggest steal in my top 15, and it's Larry Fitzgerald. If you're in a PPR league, you can't get much better than Larry Fitzgerald going in the 6th round. He's going at the 604. That's a round and a half later than anyone else on this list. That means the next 4 guys I name after Larry Fitzgerald are all going at least a round and a half before him. And I have them ranked after Larry Fitzgerald. He gets crazy targets from Carson Palmer. Obviously, if you're going to be in a keeper league or starting a keeper league, he's not as valuable. But if it's a redraft or you're getting him in later years in a keeper league and you don't need to keep him, he's a crazy value. He's going to get a ton of targets. His touchdown numbers have been down, which is why I think he hasn't been looked at the same as some of these other guys. But he's the receptions leader last year. He's Carson Palmer's first read every time. So take Larry Fitzgerald in the 6th round. Always. Everyone who listens to this should have Larry Fitzgerald if he is available in the 6th round. Amari Cooper is my number 12. Listen to this. So Larry Fitzgerald led the league in receptions last year. He's going at the 604. Amari Cooper, he had an okay year. He was good. I wouldn't say he was great. Amari Cooper is going at the 210. So that's almost 4 rounds ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. Like 3.5 rounds ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. Amari Cooper, we're still waiting on him, man. We're still waiting on that huge year. And I like him. He's in my top 15. I don't know how I feel about him for the 210. I guess that's fine. But we're waiting still. So hopefully this is the year he finally breaks out. He has all the skill. He's in a great offense. It's just, for some reason, Derek Carr does not look at him in the end zone. He's really just touchdowns away. That's what it is. He just needs a big touchdown year. So hopefully Derek Carr starts looking his way. Because he's got all the tools, man. Just needs those touchdowns. And that would really kind of catapult him up this list. My number 13 is Demaryius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas is steady. He's so steady. He's been I know a lot of people like Emmanuel Sanders more, but he's definitely the riskier option in Denver. Both of them are good options in fantasy football. Again, they're not they're not crazy amazing by any means, but Demarius Thomas is like a if you need double digits, just double digits, like low double digits, 10 points. He's the Lamar Miller of wide receivers. If you need 10 points, Demarius Thomas is your guy. If you need 27, he's probably not great. But 10 points, Demarius Thomas can get you 10 points, especially in this offense now with Simeon at quarterback. He is a low ceiling, high floor guy. And he's a great wide receiver too. If you can scoop Demarius Thomas as your wide receiver too, you're great. You're all set. You have a big score. If you can get Jordy Nelson, hypothetically, let's go with that old hypothetical team that we had: DeMarco Murray on the turn, and then Jordy Nelson. Right? So now we're not picking again until the three. Let's do a 10-man league. We're not picking again until the 310. Get another running back at 310, and on the turn, we'll take Demarius Thomas. And you're all set. Jordy Nelson, Demarius Thomas, DeMarco Murray. That's a great team. Especially for picking last. Especially for picking on the turn. And whoever the other running back is. My number 14 is Michael Crabtree, the other Oakland receiver, who's going 2 rounds after Amari Cooper and has pretty much outperformed him since he's been in the league. Michael Crabtree is the unspoken number 1 in Oakland. And you can get him 2 rounds later. So, he's the guy that gets the touchdowns over there. He's the red zone guy. And he's a good receiver. He's older. He didn't have as much hype around him after a pretty bad season in San Francisco. I think that's where he came from. Like years ago. And he got to Oakland and he's been great. He has been the number 1. They have a 1A and 1B. And I would say right now, Michael Crabtree has been the 1A, and you can get him 2 rounds later. So, look for that value in Michael Crabtree, because he's been great. Again, he's kind of a lower ceiling guy. I think that's why Amari Cooper is 2 rounds ahead of him, because the ceiling on Amari Cooper is a top 5 guy. Hypothetically. The ceiling on Michael Crabtree is not that high. Not in everyone's mind, at least. I don't think he could be a top 5 receiver. But he can definitely be top 10. Especially if he keeps catching those touchdowns. And Oakland has an explosive offense, so I like Michael Crabtree this year, especially for where he's going. And my number 15 to round it out is Davante Adams, who is so weird that he's really getting looked at this year, because I always thought he was awful. But he had a good year last year. You really seen that decline, a kind of a replacement thing with Davante Adams taking over. Where Randall Cobb was good, now it's Davante Adams. He's kind of put himself into that role as the second big guy there in Green Bay. And if you want Green Bay receivers because you want anything that has to do with Aaron Rodgers. So Davante Adams should have a good year. He's inconsistent. That's the only thing you got to watch with Davante Adams. He's had up and down games. He finally put together a good season last year, but before that was really inconsistent. You didn't know what you were getting. It was almost hard to start him, to figure out when to start him. But yeah, Davante Adams is my number 15. Again, he is going around before Michael Crabtree and almost 3 full rounds ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. It's like 2.5. Again, both those guys, I was going to say not as high of a ceiling, but I don't even know how high Davante Adams' ceiling really is. Because Does Devontae Adams scream potential number one? Wide receiver one? Does Devontae Adams scream potential top 5 wide receiver? Not really. See, I'm probably skipping on Devontae Adams. I would rather have uh, a guy like Demaryius Thomas or Michael Crabtree or Larry Fitzgerald, 3 rounds later. Hypothetically, you could get Nelson, Thomas, and Fitzgerald. That's a stud and 2 steady dudes for, wide receiver 2 or flex or wide receiver 2 and 3. That's great. That's great. I would almost have that rather than the inconsistency of Devontae Adams because I don't think the ceiling is that much higher. I just don't. Especially if I have Jordy Nelson already, I really don't want I don't want 2 wide receivers on the same team. But yeah, that's it for this week, guys. A short one, I guess. I kind of blew through those first 2 points. But that's it for not week 2. That's it for episode 2 of Joe's Fantasy Field Goal. This is going out on a Tuesday, and I'm going to try and release them on Tuesdays from now on. So every 2 weeks, like I said, every Tuesday, bi-weekly until we hit August. And then it's full steam ahead every week, every Tuesday. Stay tuned. We'll have more tips. I think I'm doing my quarterback rankings next week. It only makes sense, along with some other fun tips. So keep listening, guys, and we'll get you through your fantasy season in style, and hopefully get you some championships, some belts, some trophies, stuff like that. Adios.